critical race theory and the broader culture wars being fought in schools across this country. So we'd like to bring in three guests now, all with different perspectives. Erica Cohen is a parent and the chairwoman of the Derry School Board in New Hampshire. Stephen Rosel is a parent and active member of No Left Turn in Education, a movement to push back on what they call the leftist agenda in public education. And Diane Birdwell is an AP World History teacher in Texas. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Nice to be here.
Erica, let's start with you. What should teaching look like to you, and why do you think that it's important for our children?
So the problem I see here in New Hampshire, we have proposed legislation right now that's called a teacher loyalty bill. And what it would do is say that you can't teach history in a way that presents a negative account or representation of the founding of this country. And the problem I see with that is that the constitutional amendment that abolished slavery didn't happen until 76 years after the founding of this country. So how do you teach history without teaching slavery?
And Erica, go ahead. So to me, the concern I see is that I see people coming to school board meetings and they say, don't tell our children how to think. They tell us, they come and say, they tell us, tell our children how to think, not what to think. But if you teach current events, and when you're teaching history and current events, they're not just facts, they're facts understood by discussing different viewpoints. And if you don't teach all the facts and discuss different perspectives, you're telling them what to think by leaving out facts. And that to me is very disturbing. Erica, just want to follow up on that, because as I'm sure you know, one argument against critical race theory is that it can cause divisions in the classroom. It can make students feel uncomfortable and even impact a child's family dynamics. Is that something at all that concerns you?
So this came up in New Hampshire with some of the bills, and what our Department of Education and Department of Justice actually said was making students uncomfortable and having to discuss uncomfortable topics is part of teaching. It's not that we're blaming people for being any way, we're just discussing different perspectives that may be different than your own.
Stephen, I want to bring that question to you. She just said that being uncomfortable is part of teaching. Do you agree?
Wholeheartedly, actually. Yes, I do agree. We always need to be questioning our beliefs. The thing with CRT, though, is there's some topics and concepts involved that I think are a little beyond the scope of a lot of our youth in schools. And opponents of having the principles of CRT taught in school are not trying to eliminate existing standards or not talk about race or slavery. We don't want to eliminate anything from existing curriculums. In fact, we would really like to enrich and add to the existing curriculum. We do have a problem, however, with ideas of one race being an oppressor, one race being a victim, and that can have some impacts on young students, especially elementary and middle school.
So you said topics that are beyond the scope. What are those topics? And then is a potential solution then, because you're concerned that some are too young, to teach it at older ages and kind of do it appropriately based on, you know, a student's ability to grasp the information appropriately?
Yes, Lindsay. Actually, critical race theory is a legitimate political theory that should be taught in a university level, undergraduate or graduate level. It originally stems from the Frankfurt School back in the 1920s in Europe, based on critical theory, which was a Marxist belief. It came to the United States in the 1960s with SNCC and the Black Panthers, and they turned the socioeconomic standards into race standards as far as explaining America's history based on an oppressed class and a victim class and an oppressor class. And I don't believe that's accurate U.S. history.
Wait, so you don't believe that there was an oppressor in U.S. history? I'm just curious.
No. What I'm saying is that we do have a history of oppression in this country, and nobody is denying the teaching of that. In fact, I think that we should embrace and add to that. What I think that we're disconnecting now in our current language on this discourse is the fact that we're discussing now current systemic racism in the context of slavery. And there is a difference between whatever sort of racial issues we have today compared to what we had post 1865.
Do you think slavery should be taught in elementary, middle school?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was a horrible mark on this country, and it definitely needs to be addressed. And nobody is saying that we should not teach slavery. Nobody is saying we should not teach Jim Crow laws or the Black codes and oppression of African Americans or any other minority group in this the history of this country. We just do not think that the concepts behind introducing white people as oppressors and Black people as the oppressed in current American society as an appropriate discussion with elementary, middle school, and most of high school students.
Diane, I'd like to bring you into this. You're a history teacher. In your view, what should we teach people like you about, or our children, about how to address race and racism in the classroom? And should there be a set curriculum to follow?
Well, every state has a set curriculum. I'm an AP teacher, so College Board has its own curriculum. Parents have always had the right to review curriculum, have input at the state level and the district levels across this country. So there's a lot of false flags going on here. There's a lot of false issues. CRT is not being taught in classrooms. If any teacher is teaching someone that one race is an oppressor, that a kid would feel bad about what race they are, well, that's bad teaching. That's not CRT, and that is not a curriculum that I'm ever been aware of. And I've taught for 23 years in the state of Texas, which was a part of the Confederacy, which did fight against our own country for the right to perpetuate slavery and had Jim Crow, even when I was a child. I'm 61 years old. I'm old enough to remember what a lot of people call history.
And Diane, the education wars seem to be broadening, as I'm sure you're witnessing firsthand. And as Janae, my colleague, just reported, a Tennessee school board voted to ban a graphic novel based on the Holocaust on the basis that it included rough language and nude drawing of a woman. How far should school boards or state legislatures go when it comes to censoring school materials that might be historically relevant?
It all depends literally on every piece, every book, every play, every movie. When you're talking about Mouse, for instance, it came out, I believe, in the early 1980s after I had graduated from high school, but I've seen it, I read it, and it is extremely powerful. It is extremely well done. It's Pulitzer Prize winning. And 8th graders see a lot worse on TikTok every day, I guarantee you. If a parent thinks their kid has not seen nudity, if they think their kids have not seen violence or heard bad words, they're living in la la land. So if we put it in context of what is in that picture, what is in that graphic novel, what is in that play, I read about, and when I was in high school, we had Fahrenheit 451, we had Brave New World, we had Of Mice and Men, we had To Kill a Mockingbird, which was about rape and about Jim Crow and about lynching. And somehow we all survived. And when people say, oh, well, we're not, trying to limit the teaching. Yes, you are. Let's just be honest. This is actually a political move. People across the United States, including in Texas, conservatives are seeing this as their hot button issue now, and they are rallying people. We see their websites. They don't realize that we can see their websites because, we have older members of our families who are on them. And, guys, we know what they're saying. Even that gentleman's group, No Left Turn. Well, left is a loaded term, isn't it? So when you're talking about critical race theory, let's get it straight. It's not being taught below the college level. And
Stephen, I want to give Stephen a chance to respond to that, because it really is interesting when you talk about, like, Governor Youngkin in Virginia, that he was running in part on a platform where he said that this is not going to be taught in our classrooms, and it was not being taught in the state of Virginia. So is it or is it not? Is it being taught at this point, Stephen, as far as you know?
Actually, I am a teacher, believe it or not, Linsey, and I have seen it firsthand. Countywide and school-wide, I saw lessons pushed out on Ibrahim X. Kendi's book on how to be an anti-racist, in which he quotes, the only way to remedy past discrimination is present discrimination, and the only way to remedy present discrimination is future discrimination. I personally saw that lesson pushed out in my school here in Virginia. Not to mention another lesson on white fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Now, I actually agree with Diane. I do not believe books should be banned in schools. There should be maybe a parent sign-out form if there's some explicit material or whatnot, but I'm a free speech absolutist. I do not believe we should be banning books or any speech whatsoever. But I have personally firsthand seen these concepts, not called CRT, but the concepts behind CRT being taught in schools.
And Erica, I want to bring you back in. One last question here. Another recent education headline is that the so-called Don't Say Gay bill that took a step forward in Florida, it limits classroom discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity. How do you feel about that bill?
So I wrap them all, lots of these bills are wrapped under the same theme for me, which is there seems to be an effort lately to limit the kind of discussions that happen in schools and the kind of topics that can be covered in schools. And I believe very strongly that our teachers can have honest and frank discussions with kids about people's differences while respecting that everyone has different opinions and not sending any message that someone's inferior or superior or that anyone should be made to feel lesser or more than someone else, but just understand people's differences. It's something I see kids do all the time when they come to school board meetings. And to be clear, in Derry, we do not teach critical race theory, but a lot of the legislation in New Hampshire feels like to me, when people come and talk about it and what's happening in Concord, that they're really trying to limit discussions, and I find that concerning.
And Stephen, just about out of time, but I would just ask, how do you feel the appropriate discussion language? What do you think that sexuality and our historical differences with regard to race, how do you feel it's most appropriate to address it in a classroom?
I think openly and honestly with kindness, to be honest with you. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we are moving backwards into judging people by the color of their skin instead of the character of their content. And when we start getting into some of these concepts like how to be an anti-racist or white fragility, we are lumping large segments of the population together based on the color of their skin. And they may not be called CRT in the state-sponsored curriculum, but the principles behind it are being taught. And we can have those discussions about where each one of us come from and our backgrounds and our sensitivities, but we need to be very careful about isolating groups based on their skin color.
Diane, you get the final word. What's your response to what Stephen just had to say?
I'm already seeing, again, that we don't see it in a lot of the classrooms. And if you saw it, I'd like to know the context of the lesson, not just that a lesson was being pushed out. But also I can see in Texas that it's becoming McCarthyism. If you're worried about the color of your skin, you ought to be worried if you're a teacher or a librarian in Texas, because some of these groups are taking it so far. They're threatening lives. They're threatening our jobs. They're going after people. They're doxing teachers online. They're doxing librarians. We're losing, the Dallas-Fort Worth area has had 9 superintendents put in their retirement papers in the last 4 months. 10,000 education employees in Texas have put in their retirement papers. So if their goal is to destroy public education, they're succeeding. But they're doing it at the cost of education for kids. History should make you uncomfortable. History should make you feel something new, and history should teach you something. And we've been down this road before, and it was called McCarthyism. And we've seen that, sadly, damage institutions that we say we respect and love.
Really interesting to hear all the different points of views. Erica, Stephen, Diane, we thank you so much for your time and for joining us tonight.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.